What did you write? Just write join.
I wrote the same, but obviously the imperialist nature, the tone of my voice, the command and the gravitas of the Vina.
Welcome to the Vassals of Kingsgrave WolfCast edition, our review of the second episode of the first season of House of the Dragon. My name is Patrick the Tall, and we are an offshoot of the podcast of Ice and Fire. We, in general, talk about everything from anime to video games to books to everything, really. But we're especially known for diving into the Game of Thrones when it was airing. So we're glad to be back, and in general, in this episode, we will be spoiling the books, all the books of George R. R. Martin, but we will not be spoiling past season 5 of Game of Thrones, since I personally have not seen past that, and some of the other people who listen to this have not either. So for a more full spoiler experience, you can go for the Dragoncast, who is also part of the Vassal of Kingsgrave. I am joined here today by Bina.
Hey everyone, it's Bina 007 on the Discord server.
And Sarah.
Hey everyone, it's Sarah, aka Dr. Blood.
We also have Elle.
Hey guys, it's Elle Nettles. Glad to hear from everybody.
We also have Bing.
Hello, this is Bing. Once upon a time was a huge fan.
And lastly but not least, Jock.
Hello, I'm Jock. Also Jock and social media.
So this was an episode where we saw it was a slow episode, to be completely honest. We had a lot of council meetings, we had a lot of talks between different characters, and we got to get a better feel of them. But if we weren't to go into the lemon cakes, would you like to start out, Bina, telling us what you would give them?
Well, I think I gave the last episode a 4.5, and only just because I think, you save the 5 for the Battle of the Blackwater style episodes. But I would give this an equally high rating, because what you call slow, my dear friend, I call an emotional roller coaster and huge character plotting that brings us to what's going to be the ultimate civil war. So I loved seeing Alicent and Rhaenyra develop their characters in opposition to each other. And I just thought it was just full of great acting. So yeah, I did not find it slow.
You're entitled to your opinion. Sarah, what about you?
I agree with Bina. I really enjoyed the characterizations that happened, and I was especially impressed by how radical and atmospheric shift they enacted between the first episode and this one, and how neatly it was done, and how it still felt cohesive as a whole show. So I'm gonna go also 4.5, maybe 4.75 if we're really parsing our lemon cakes. But yeah, I'll save the 5 for a showstopper, but it's a 5 across the board for me so far, like just the show itself. So like 4.5.
Wow. Okay, that's high praise. Elle?
I'm gonna go with, and I believe I did a 4 for the first episode as well. A 4, though I'm kind of in the middle between Bina, Sarah, and you, as that it was an emotional roller coaster and definitely an emotional ride for sure, with all of the things that happen and the characterization of everybody kind of building it up to where we know it's going to go. But yes, I can admit, especially compared to last week, it was slow in that pace. But that doesn't mean that wasn't bad or wasn't as good as the first episode, but the meat is really what brought me, as opposed to initially going from a 3.5 to a 4. So I'll say a 4.
Very nice. Bing?
Go with a 4.75. I really liked this episode. It was really nice. I think the characterization is something that was, I feel, missing from the first episode. It was really got into it this episode. One of my complaints from the last episode was that I don't feel like there's such a strong, you don't get the strong characters that we saw from the first episodes of Game of Thrones. I think they really did that job here in the second episode, so that's a good thing. And I really like Viserys. He's just a nerd who wants to He really shouldn't be the king. He really should be painting figurines and
In
doing stuff like
contemporary
that.
life, he'd be an adult fan of Lego, wouldn't he?
Or Warhammer or something like that.
So you're saying you would marry him?
I would.
I'm not saying I'd
Yes,
marry him,
yes.
but I am married to an adult fan.
Sure.
And
Equally. Yeah. Okay. So
He's a good dude.
Yeah.
If not, he didn't have to be the king.
well, we'll
Yeah.
get into
Bina,
why
I-
he's a good dude in later in this episode, my friend.
I too am espoused to an adult fan of Lego, so that hit home for sure.
I feel your pain, sir.
Well, we'll move on to Jock then.
Probably about the same, 3 out of 5. Find it quite a change in the character, but the book version of Viserys Mostly married an 11-year-old, and the show version was against marrying a 12-year-old. So he's certainly a lot better than in the books in the show.
Jock is different. But yeah, to round it out, I would give it probably the same, maybe a 3.5 this time. I mean, there's a lack of scenes that I really dislike this time, which of course is good, but also it lacks some of the scenes that I really liked last time. So I don't know. It was on the whole better than last time, definitely. So I'll give it a 3.5 lemon cakes out of 5. So no, we've done this, and before we go into the whole discussion about the show proper, I was Bina asked me whether or not it would be a good idea for us to have a little lore drop, not about the books, but about this podcast itself. And well, I think I've found something that sort of tells the short version of the story, and I'll just do this right now. So there's a castle in Dorne called Kingsgrave. This is the ancestral home of House Manwoody, a house name so hilarious it must have been named so as a jest. A podcast device and fire claimed in the beginning of time this name and castle for their own, and we, being an offshoot, owning its allegiance to said podcast of the Manwoody persuasion, would naturally be vassals of Kingsgrave, which is hence our name. So, is there anything more to add to that, Bina or Bing, for that sake?
No, I think it's just important that the listener knows, if the listener's stumbling upon this podcast for the first time, doesn't know who the fuck we are, that we are basically named as a group of people after House Manwoody because we thought it was cool in a Beavis and Butthead kind of way that George R. R. Martin made a dick joke.
Yeah. and there's also a house called Blackwoody, right?
Yeah, but Manwoody just sounded like a penis joke, and we thought it was cool that George would throw one in. So that our origins are not illustrious; they are very firmly juvenile. So
I think specifically the hosts of the podcast of Ice and Fire were the first ones to found it extremely funny and adopted Manwoody, and then we all sort of joined the banners because I think we all share their humor.
Yeah, and if you go to the podcast of Ice and Fire's site, you can actually see a banner, sigil for the House Manwoody, like the actual sigil, I think. Whilst we have a bastardized version of it for our own sigil here. So,
but it's a cool sigil because it's like a white skull with a golden crown on top. Because the original King Albin Manwoody killed he killed a king of one of the Roynar kings and made himself a king until Queen Nymeria came down and put him back to being a lord. So it is quite a piratical, quite cool sigil, I feel. Although I discovered today that House Manwoody has no house words. So if any of the listeners or the vassals can think of good house words that also hint at dick jokes, then they should for sure send those in, at least to me. I mean, never mind anyone else.
Snort or a giggle,
Yeah.
From now on WolfCast, we'll do a special section at the end where we just run through possible house words.
Yeah, the filthier the better.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway, on to the sensitive topic of this episode.
Yeah, so the first scene, as you might say, is the intro. It's basically the same music as the original Game of Thrones, but set in the freehold of Valeria, or at least the model of the freehold of Valeria. And you also see crests that sort of signifies different characters or different kings and queens from the line of the Targaryens, and blood running from one place to another through the different kings and queens. So any thoughts about that?
Thought it was a bit weak that they didn't have new music, and I guess it's just they want to establish continuity with Game of Thrones and with the IP, and just it maybe commercially they felt it made sense. But I was really looking forward to a new theme, and I felt that the opening credits were a bit weak. Like, I get what they're trying to do, they're just not as impressive as original Game of Thrones.
Completely agree.
I think that they could have pretty effectively bridged the gap between the commercial interest in the connection and a new version just by re-recording it with a different instrumental composition, right? Like if they had played it on an organ or something like that to make it feel older or make it feel more darker or grittier or something. I just think that there was an opportunity there to riff on the original and keep it largely intact, but still make the impact a little bit different. And I wish that they had gone that direction instead of just dropping the exact same thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think they should play it on an accordion.
Ukulele.
I mean, there are so many like sort of famous rock stars who wanted cameos in Game of Thrones. I mean, just get one of those guys to do a version, right? I mean, dear God, not Ed Sheeran, but I'm sure there's an actually cool band out there, like the Arctic Monkeys or someone who would want to do it.
Like a death metal version or something.
Yes.
Yeah, that feels appropriate to the content.
It does,
right?
Yeah.
Last episode, this episode not too much. Some sort of rearrangement, maybe. I feel like just to make it's exactly the same, down to the weird pauses in the middle, so that they can elongate it sometimes when they want to go to different places, which doesn't make sense for this for this opening.
Yeah, even if they had generated something like The Reigns of Castamere, where it's like a signature song for the Lannisters, but for the Targaryens, and then woven that through the game, because this sort of implies that Game of Thrones song is actually the Targaryen song, which I don't think is fair necessarily. So yeah, I don't know. I wish they had distinguished it in some way, but
yeah, 20 million per episode. Throw Ramin Djawadi some more money for sure.
Well, me personally being a synthwave fan and fan of retro synth, some synthesizers would have been pretty awesome. A version of that, but that will never happen. I was kind of happy to hear the original song for the opening credits. I didn't mind it. I know why they probably did it for the continuity issues, but I was super confused. I think it just didn't go with what they were doing with the opening scene. It felt really disjointed and just not put together well. Like, even though we couldn't, I didn't know what they wanted us to do. Do you want us to kind of make out and like kind of read the story and like what's happening, and kind of like when we looked at Winterfell, we were going to King's Landing and such and such. It felt really disjointed to me. They didn't go together. Whatever way that they should have went, they should have kind of made it flow a little bit better.
I feel like your opening visuals shouldn't need footnotes, and this one definitely did. Like, once I read the breakdown of what all the symbols were and sort of the intent behind it, I mean, it's very striking, but the fact that it doesn't read, even for like, mega lore fans like us, I mean, I looked at the sigils, what the hell are those things? You know what I mean? And I felt like, they were minor houses, or I didn't know. And I found that frustrating because I feel like it should have been more readily, more legible, like upfront, rather than having to kind of parse it behind the scenes.
Oh, you didn't get that, Sarah. Uh-huh. No, I didn't get it either, so you're completely correct in that.
And it's kind of like if, these big ass nerds can't get it, can't read it, can't see it, what the hell is everyone else supposed to do?
So I have a theory, and I think it's very likely. I think I'm calling it now. I think they're gonna change Viserys' death to him, instead of being impaled on the Iron Throne, he's gonna be impaled on his own model city, and that's the blood running through.
Oh no.
The answer to L's, what are we meant to do, is we're meant to go onto the Reddit because Mr. Corb Reddit thread where someone had absolutely passed every single image in the opening credits and which bit of Targaryen history it referred to. So thank God for the Reddit nerds because they're another level of nerd from us.
My favorite part about the intro was the bottomless well that was the Targaryen sigil at the end. And I thought it was very extremely foreboding in a very negative way that all of this blood, connected all of these different pathways and all these things. And then eventually it all just poured into a hole in the ground. And that's the Targaryens, which is not inappropriate for the way that this thing goes. But it was like, oh, that's not good for them.
No. Well, let's move on to the first real scene, the small council. So the council have gathered to discuss the choosing of a new Kingsguard and trouble at the Stepstones. Rhaenyra proposes dragons, which is silly, and silly little girls should go play with knights. What do you think about that, Bean?
I think it's good that they immediately, in the beginning of this episode, established Rhaenyra's character because this episode is really important for her. We didn't really get to see her enough in the last episode, I think. Enough to make her stand out on her own. And this episode did. And I think her actress, current actress, unfortunately, I think she won't be acting in this role for a very long time, but she did a really good job.
Definitely. Bina, you had something about the small council?
I mean, it's a throwaway line, but the fact that they're always drinking wine probably doesn't help the quality of decision making. I also really want to know what the flipping balls in the disc signify. Never seen that anyone really use them apart from put the ball in. Is it meant to be like passing the speaking horn, or what's going on with that? Do they put the balls in a bag and vote in some way? Do they just fondle their balls? I don't know. I mean, what's going on?
I thought we thought maybe it was like a time card that you punch in, right? Like that it was, which your face at the table seems like it would have the same the same effect. Although there
my ass on a chair, I feel
right, exactly. Like I am the ball. But there's one scene, and I think it might be this first one where Corlys doesn't actually place his ball the hole. And I thought that was like, if you're gonna go balls out on the table, like it's it was a very interesting omission of that like weird recently established pattern that he seemed not to check in, like he was just there on his own rather than as like part of the council, or I don't know what what might have suggested. Maybe he just forgot his ball that day. I don't know, but
yeah. I mean, I wonder if maybe you could have proxy votes, like you could give your ball to someone else if you couldn't attend the meeting.
That's interesting.
It's maybe made of like dragon glass or something like that.
Or maybe the writers of House of the Dragon are a bit like George R. R. Martin and just wanted to put in a running visual gag about people fondling their balls.
Yeah, that might be it.
I don't know. Yeah,
it does seem like an unfortunate, reinforcement of what Rhaenys was saying about, how important the scepter and balls are for governing the realm.
Indeed. But in general, though, I mean, like all joking aside, the small council, considering how we saw the small council in Game of Thrones, which was fairly dysfunctional, the king basically never turning up or overriding them. I mean, this feels like a functional council whereby the king turns up, takes it seriously, takes advice from all sides. Yes, they have disagreements, but they try and sort them out. I mean, it does feel like we are seeing Westeros in a different era and a better governed era, no matter how much they go on about how fragile it is, than the bankrupt, completely dysfunctional realm we saw with Robert. So it's quite nice seeing it, just the machinery of government just working in a way.
It definitely shows how horrible Robert was.
You might say Robert dropped the ball.
Oh, hiya. So, Jock, you have something about drinking?
Yeah, maybe the Mistress Rhaenyra overfilling everybody's cup so that she appears the smartest in the room.
I think she is arguably one of the smartest in the room, right? I mean, if they'd ever let her get a word in edgeways.
Yeah. Dragons?
She is.
Dragons? You silly girl. You shouldn't use for dragons.
I was also thinking, actually, what an amazing education it was. And I was thinking to our Viserys from Game of Thrones, and that, I mean, obviously he comes across as a complete entitled cock, but, he was not raised in a court. He was not raised in the presence of people acting like kings and showing responsibility and what that means. He's never been privy to counsel and the wisdom of counsel. It's another contrast with how she's being raised to how Viserys was raised in Game of Thrones. And it's kind of impressive. And it just reminded me a bit also of Arya with Tywin Lannister as well. But you can use it to your benefit, right? If you're, although it's kind of like quite a menial job to be effectively a squire to the council, but you can use it to your benefit.
Well, I understood that in Fire and Blood as being a purposeful choice on Viserys' part to make her this, so that she would be present and she would sort of get to know the day-to-day business of the realm, and that he, as the realm's delight from the beginning, like he wanted her close to him. He didn't want her away from him, and he wanted her to be kind of at the heart of things from the very beginning, even in that, relatively sort of menial service, but that it was a means to an end. And I feel already, I thought this in the first episode, and I feel like they've continued down this path of doing like a major disservice to her character and her later motivations by underplaying that so aggressively.
I completely agree. And I think it kind of makes Viserys feel less consistent, because why have her close? Because she is the realm's delight, but also his delight. But then cut her off and undermine her so much when she wants to use that learning and make a contribution. In this episode, apparently they have very little relationship. He hasn't spoken to her in her grief. Alicent has kind of taken on the role that actually one might have expected between, father and daughter to come together in this time of grief. And it's almost like, which way do you want it to be? Why is she in the small council? If her father loves her, if he actually is incredibly distant, it's so confusing to me.
Well, I think maybe to give the show credit, in my show, sort of the before and after Viserys, before and after his wife died. Sort of before, where he was probably more energetic and probably want to get Rhaenyra more involved, whereas the after version shows almost a dead man walking at times, that is indecisive, that become much more indecisive, but also much more prone to lash out at times, emotionally unstable maybe, and not quite as good in terms of decision making as before. Maybe.
I think it was quite level-headed most of the time, actually. I think it was only in this.
But I think with the most major decision in this episode, it shows that he's going directly with his heart.
So, any other opinions on this scene, or should we go on?
Vámonos.
Okay, so we're going to the choosing of the King's Guard, and it's basically a scene where Rhaenyra is choosing which King's Guard she finds the most competent to fill the role of a King's Guard. They're one short because the commander of the guard died, and now they're one short. So for her, catching poachers and poking each other at tourneys is, in Rhaenyra's opinion, all that most of these knights are good for, except for Kristen Cole. So I think she's showing that she has a will of her own as like the first real time where she can show and she actually gets to make a decision, and that's good for her character, I think. Any other opinions?
And it's a wise decision, because she's not swayed by old houses. She's swayed by who actually has competent battle experience and can provide her father protection. So it shows both wisdom and love for her father. I think it's a cool scene. And you can just see Otto Hightower, who just comes across as incredibly conservative, just getting really discomforted by this woman who has a voice and is more than, quote unquote, a royal womb.
And having the will to really kind of stand up and kind of move right past him as well. And you could tell he was really frustrated and a bit probably worried about that as well, because she kind of really was really smooth with it. Really no hesitation, and very, very impressive will.
I think it was also a gesture similar to the moment that she had with Daemon and the necklace, where I have the sense from her, even in these first two episodes, that she is very, very firmly rooted in Targaryen history in a very practical kind of way. So she takes it as her identity. She speaks Valyrian very freely with Daemon, and in this case, her selection of a lower ranking person with more battle experience is perfectly in keeping with the first King's Guard, right? And how that was established in the beginning. So yeah, she has this kind of like a practical continuity, I guess is maybe the best way for me to describe it, that like she's aware of what it means to be a Targaryen in ways that should be very helpful for her, could be very helpful for her.
So I know I could have looked it up to double check. Was it the Lord Commander that passed, or was it just a regular member of the King's Guard? Because I thought the Lord Commander was the knight who was escorts her everywhere. Who I can't, the name escapes me right now, but I was confused about that.
I think it was the Lord Commander. It was the old guy in last episode that was standing at the small council as well. I think he died like within the last 6 months, and then that guy who's escorting them now is the new Lord Commander. And I
Got it.
yeah, so I don't remember the names either, but pretty sure that's how it happened.
I just wanted to point out Rhaenys like lurking throughout that whole scene too. I thought that was such an interesting, like the way it was framed and the way it was filmed, and that she's just this silent presence, and you're sort of forced to wonder like what she's doing there, what she's looking for, what she's thinking. That she was very powerful, even though she didn't have any lines. She still had a really strong presence in that scene, which I thought was interesting.
Moving on. So we're going to I'm calling this the company in the King's Own Chambers, which is an abridged one, because I'm putting this one together with the later scene with when Alicent returns and gives him the gift. So the King and Alicent reminisce about the good old days and lost legacies, and a dragon is broken, which can be foreshadowing, maybe. So I think that Alicent mending that the dragon breaking in Viserys' hands, and Alicent then mending it and giving it to him as a gift is, if not foreshadowing, it's like a signal from her to Viserys that she can help him be mended, so to say.
I can mend your broken heart.
Yes.
Ugh. Is this where we're going to get into how much agency Alicent has and how much she likes what she's doing? Or is that coming later?
No,
Right.
It's now.
You go, Al, you go.
Yeah. I mentioned earlier that it's a kind of, I don't want to do it. You know, it wasn't my idea to do it. My father is pushing this, and I'm a dutiful daughter. But holy shit, I'm fucking good at this. Like, I have the stomach for it, kind of thing. And it's my best friend, and it's hurtful. She's aware of what she's doing and how it's going to come out and how Rhaenyra's going to feel and how it will affect their relationship. But to me, I just couldn't help but feel a very an air of success on her. And again, I could be completely reading into this. I can completely be overstating her agency, but I definitely think that she has more that it's showing up to be, or how the showrunners are kind of making the lens of it to be. I definitely agree with Bina on that. There is plenty of agency going on there, at least to an extent. That's it.
I agree with you, Ellen. I think to me there are huge historical parallels with how I mean, what do I know? That's an absurd statement. With Anne Boleyn, where your father decides he's going to put you in the path of a king who needs a new wife. And you are young and comely. I hate that phrase. And you have no choice. It's a patriarchy. You know that at some point you're going to be married to some lord or other. You're not going to have much choice in the matter if your father decides to make an alliance. But hey, you can be allied to a king, and your children can be kings and queens. So, and there is, I think, for a girl at that age, a sort of pleasure in sexual awakening and realizing actually you have some sexual power. You can use it. And I think that's what I was detecting in the performance, which may or may not be what's in the books. And I also feel it's an interesting contrast with Rhaenyra, and it mirrors what we saw in Game of Thrones, that there are girls like Arya who see that power structure that they've been raised in and just want to subvert it, want to bring it down. And I guess that's where Rhaenyra is, right? She will be the first if she is a female queen. But there are women who, like Sansa, who are also raised in that structure and who are kind of okay with it and just want to be the best they can possibly be within it. They're not rebels.
Or Marjorie.
Yeah, or Marjorie, or even, Cersei. I think Cersei would have wanted to bring it down, but kind of couldn't. So now it's, I'm going to be the best I can be. I'm going to support my son and make him king and have power through him. So I think, it's a really that's why I loved this episode, because I think it's two smart, strong women who happen to be best friends, choosing quite different paths on how to exercise what little power they can in this very fucked up patriarchy.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, and I think for me, another dimension to it for Alicent as a specific character might get a gloss from that somewhat problematic scene between Mysaria and Daemon, and her talking about liberation from fear. And I think that as far as a character is detailed, the amount of emphasis that they're sort of very tacitly putting on her shredded cuticles suggests that she doesn't feel safe. She doesn't feel supported. She doesn't feel secure with her father, and that Viserys is maybe a way for her to be with someone kind who genuinely cares about her and has the power to, and would give her the power to protect herself. So I think that there is an element of almost like a survival instinct that's coming into it, at least from my perspective, on her reactions and sort of what she's seeing, that like maybe she can be safe with him in a way that she has never been before.
And yet it's a choice. There is not a choice in what she has to do, because her dad wants it, right? But there is a specific choice in not confiding in her friend. Just as there's a specific choice from Viserys in not taking his daughter, or indeed Lord Corlys, aside and not embarrassing them at small councils and just saying, look, I've got to marry. They're trying to force this young girl on me. This is to Rhaenyra. But if the whole point is to secure our line, I'm going to keep you as my heir, but I just need to spit out some kids. So I'm going to go with Alicent. You might find that odd and uncomfortable, but she's of childbearing age, and this helps us and it helps you as my heir. He could have done the same to Lord Corlys. He could have taken him aside, look, saying, you will always be my right-hand side. I need your support. I will make amazing marriages for your daughter. If I have a son, if I have daughters, I will marry them to your kids, but I just need to crack out a male heir ASAP, and I can't wait until your daughter's old enough to give me a son. But the way he handles it, the way they both handle it, is so sneaky and therefore makes me feel ill of them.
Right.
I hope she has sexual agency. I hope she gets to, I hope there is more to it than just being forced to it. I mean, I'm just what I'm saying. I hope there's more to it.
It's weird, isn't it? Because Viserys doesn't come across to me as a rapist, but then again, he did let his wife die on the birthing bed and not even tell her what he was going to do or give her any part. I mean, she might have made the same choice. Ugh. So who knows?
This like it doesn't occur to him to like share the conclusions that he comes to. I think is part of the reason that people think he's so vacillating, is that like he never seems to come to a conclusion. But then also, like this is the second time in 2 episodes that he's completely blindsided what should be the most important female figure to him, first his wife and then his daughter, with just not even mentioning like what he had in mind. And I understand that they were 2 like very different circumstances, but it felt like the same kind of like, hey, you know what, you could have just let them know like given them a chance to kind of process it or something. I don't know, unnecessarily cruel for him to not bother.
Well, that's why I said I think he that's the reason why I said earlier that I think he's not thinking in he is mentally shaken, and I think he was so set in one direction that he's going to have that Emma is going to give birth to a son. It's going to happen. That when things went very, very wrong in the other direction, he stopped being able to process decisions properly.
You don't think it's odd that more girls weren't thrown his way, or that given that he's been through such trauma that he was just sitting alone with his Lego and like no one was around him? Would courtiers not have been surrounding him?
I think it's just someone who cares about his hobbies, what he really likes to do in life, and for one, some people seem to share in his hobbies, and that's what did it. He went with his heart, and his heart ultimately.
I'm not sure that's entirely authentic. I mean, my experience of adult fans of Legos, they don't like anyone touch their Lego.
Oh, they don't like it. No,
they don't want their spouse fondling their Lego.
People who let touch the Legos are the most special ones.
I think that like I mean I think there's that whole like even dragons get lonely kind of line that happened in the conversation with Lena, but Yeah, I mean, I think that she's there from his perspective, like for him, and in the performance in this episode in particular, he seemed very hunted to me, like that he had this kind of, he constantly felt like he was backed into a corner and there was no real answer that anyone could give to him that would get him out of it. And that element was missing in the scenes with Alicent, and I thought that was so subtle and just so brilliantly performed, that yeah, like he might feel safe with her in a very similar way that she does with him, which is weird considering their radically different backgrounds.
Yeah, I mean, the impression I got from their scenes was actually this could work as a marriage. That they're both getting something they need from the other. I mean, I really want to praise the performances by Paddy Considine and the actress playing the young Alison. I just think that the subtlety of some of the physical acting was just superb. I think it could work, guys. I think they can reign in peace and love and glory. It's going to be fine.
Yes,
It's going to
absolutely.
be fine. It's all going to be fine.
Yeah. On that note, let's move on. We're going to go to the Sept real quickly because it's a scene where, for some reason, Rhaenyra agrees to accompany Alicent to the Sept, and there she finds comfort in the gods and her friends' company. And I want you to start out by saying this is not the Sept of Baelor because this has not been built yet. So it's another Sept, a smaller one. Yeah. Any thoughts?
So here you are sitting here with your best friend with about 1 billion candles with a fire hazard where you can bear, your soul and, connect with your best friend in some kind of way, and you don't say anything. I know that it's with Otto, my father, this is something I have to do, but for her to keep it under the hat like that, there's something personally purposeful with that. That's something very agenda-ish with that to me. More than this is my duty to my father, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. It rubbed me the wrong way. And it just going back to the whole agency thing and with her really kind of having a mind to doing what she's doing is what I have a problem with. That is what's not sitting well with me.
Yeah, I agree. It doesn't sit well with me, and it doesn't ring true to any female bestie relationship I've ever been in or known of. And I just feel it speaks to something more calculating. And whether that's good or bad writing and deliberate, I don't know. But you would tell your best friend and you would say, look, I'm really sorry I'm being forced into this by dad. And I know that your father respects your claim, and I promise that when we have kids, if any is a boy, I will still respect your claim. But I'm really sorry this is going to have to, you would just discuss it. They did so well in the first episode of showing their intimacy, that lovely scene with the Godswood. And it's so moving. Really, your best friend is crying over the death of her mother, and you're not going to say anything.
We saw her flinch when he confirmed that she hadn't told Rhaenyra. She had that moment of like, and I couldn't totally read that, but then I think in this scene, it did feel to me a lot like Daddy's younger girlfriend trying to like make nice with his teenage daughter. Like, right, he's like, maybe if I can, show her that I'm looking out for their relationship and that I'm trying to like mend this. Like, it seemed like that kind of mindset to me where she was trying to like show that she could help their relationship rather than interfering with it. Like that she was trying to lay that groundwork. But I don't think she would make any of those promises about not putting her children ahead of, because like I don't honestly believe that she I don't think her father would let it happen, but I don't honestly believe that like she would feel needed to do that, and
she wouldn't want that.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's
she's ambitious. I mean, she's been raised in court. What's the highest thing you can achieve at court? Be queen and have your children be kings and queens. Do you think Otto Hightower realizes that Viserys is still committed to Rhaenyra being his heir? Because surely the whole point of marrying Alicent to him is not to have that happen. Or is this something that's just between Viserys and Rhaenyra at this point?
I honestly think that that Otto does not count Rhaenyra as a proper heir, and he's taking herself out of that.
Well, I mean, that's fine, but then you're by implication saying I don't count Viserys as a proper king with whose word is law. Well, I suppose that's what we're going to get to later,
And I
isn't
think
it?
Yeah.
they made it clear that he was arm twisted into making her the heir, which again is the frustration that I have with the changes they made from the book, where it seems much less realistic on Hightower's part to think that Viserys would ever set her aside when she's established as the realm's delayed and his. But in this case, like it was pretty clear in the first episode that like he was forced into not even choice, right, to make her the heir. So I think it's much more reasonable the way the show is setting it up for Hightower to think that if there is another option that presents itself in the future, that Viserys would be likely to take it. And I don't think that's unrealistic in this scenario, in ways that I feel cheapen Rhaenyra's perspective in the forthcoming conflict in ways that I'm not thrilled about, but we'll see.
Yep, agreed.
On that thing, I just think we can, because I didn't talk about it any other place in the notes. I think that the scene between Rhaenyra and Rhaena, talking about the how things are going to go if there's going to be a male heir for the realm. I think that's I think that's basically what he's also counting on, that people will come out the woodwork for a king more so than a queen.
I think that's fair.
Well, I'm gonna move on. Courtship in the courtyard with the daughter of the master of ships, I call it. So Corlys apologizes for his outburst and offers his 12-year-old daughter as Viserys' new queen. And to talk to the scenery, I like that the garden is close to the ocean, because it seems like that's where the sea snake has his most, refers to his power there. And that's every dealing with like actual plotting or dealing with the sea snake, with Corlys, happens in this courtyard by the sea. So I just like that. That's close to his power. Anything else?
The poor 12-year-old.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't got anything really to say about this scene because I think it's just straightforward, gets us where we need to go, apart from the fact that if you think of Alicent being an older version of Lyanna, just taught to be an agent of her house and take direct orders from her father, it makes her actions make more sense, I guess. To me, by far the more interesting thing is Rhaenys giving quite jaded but probably very good advice to Rhaenyra. And actually, when she was doing that, and I wonder if they've done this deliberately, they've cast her to look very much like a younger version of the Queen of Thorns from Game of Thrones. The idea of the sort of jaded, cynical older woman who's been through everything and understands the limits of what you can change as a young woman. That, to me, was the far more interesting part of this scene.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought when I watched that scene. Because before, again, first episode, Rhaenys was always just sort of sitting in the background, not doing anything. They really finally gave her a character here, and yeah, it definitely recalls a lot of Queen of Thorns.
How many times you guys think the Corlys made Rhaena practice that bit before she could sit down for dinner?
I think she's pretty smart, so probably she just have to memorize once or twice. But very clearly, she memorized line by line. I have no idea what she's saying, what it actually means.
Oh, yeah.
I really admire the way that the writers got us so quickly and so effectively on the side of Viserys marrying Alicent, because when she first went in and she's like, I have a book, like it was so cringy for me, and it made me so uncomfortable, and I was like, oh no, don't do that, and then they're like, or you could marry this 8-year-old. Well, don't do that, and suddenly like she seems like the much less, pedophilic choice, and like actually kind of reasonable, and his response, his like revulsion almost, or like extreme discomfort towards the concept of like quote unquote courting this little girl. I just thought the whole thing was really well done, because at least for me, I went from like very much rooting against his ending up with Alicent, which like I understand is inevitable, to being like, oh my god, if those are the options, like please choose Alicent, please.
I'm sure Viserys is going on in his head too.
Yeah, and this is part of a consistent thing in this show to soften Viserys and make him more likable. But I think it's also probably a meta text or a meta video wink at us, the book readers, and saying, we know you're probably thinking this isn't true to the books, but look, let's show you what this would have looked like if we'd done it true to the books. Wink, wink. You're right? This is just grim. We can't do this. And I think it's just to say, look, give us a break for changing it, because we have to change it. We can't show you what's on the page, because sometimes, when we actually show you, it's just different. To use the Patrick word, it's different.
It's different, yeah. So do we just move on quickly again? I think we got what we needed to talk about here. That yes, it
I
was.
think Viserys wants us to move very, very quickly from this scene.
Yes.
I would just like to go very much contrary to what I assume is popular opinion and say that the conversation between Rhaenys and Rhaenyra was my absolute least favorite part in this episode. I found it reductive and I found it very troubling because part of what I liked so much about the Rogue Prince and the Princess and the Queen was the way that, in my reading at least, Rhaenys recognized a younger version of herself in Rhaenyra and thus chose to support her claim in a way that nobody supported her. And this confrontation felt rather it felt more bitter, and I didn't feel any of that empathy or that sort of fellow feeling as like, well, if I couldn't be the first queen, then maybe she can. And it felt like all of that just got gutted by the scene, and I was really gutted by that. So I hope that is not,
because I read it differently. So I got the bitterness and the jadedness and that I didn't succeed in doing this and I'm pretty cool. But I got almost like a protective, tough love. And I think Dragoncast talked about this a little bit as well. To me, it was more like I pinned my hopes on achieving this and got so destroyed. Please don't go down that path because it's heartbreaking. So I took it in a kind of like stern headmistress, but kind of, doing it for the best of you, for your best interests.
Yeah, I didn't get that at all. And even if she had just acknowledged that, I feel like out loud, but it just felt so dismissive and so, you're stupid to think that this could ever even happen, like, you little fool kind of a thing, like Cersei talking to Sansa rather than like a more potentially
Queen
nurturing...
of Thorns talking to Marjorie.
Yeah, exactly. Like that felt like actionable advice, whereas this just felt like a fucking idiot if you think this is gonna happen, and that
fool of a
and I'm sure Rhaenyra felt the same way and took it that way as well.
That hurt.
I mean, maybe their show writers are relying on the fact that a lot of people won't have read the books, and therefore you can almost make them feel that Rhaenys looks down on as patronizing Rhaenyra, so that when eventually she does come to support her, it'll be more of a surprise and more of a pleasing plot twist.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right, I'll go with that for now. Thank you, Bina. You have soothed my aching.
That's what I'm here for.
Yay.
Going to the supper then. I'm moving quickly now. Supper of the Targaryens. So Viserys tries to reconcile over dinner, and well, first of all, I just need to get this out of the way. Why are there so many eating noises, like drinking and eating noises in in this scene? It completely pulled me out of whatever they were talking about. The whole soundscape.
It's called mukbang. The kids are all into it these days.
Yeah.
I just didn't notice that at all, Patrick. I think that says more about you than the show.
Maybe, but it's still annoying. Anything else? I think personally that it's obvious to see that Alicent is trying to butter them both up to try to reconcile, but I think still Rhaenyra is like being all teenager like, and so like, well, he needs to do the first step. He must take the first step towards reconciliation. I won't do anything unless he takes the first step.
I mean, maybe in Alicent's defense, by suggesting that she should have, speak to her father, she's hoping Viserys will come clean to Rhaenyra. Maybe she feels it's not her place to go beyond the king's instructions and reveal everything to her best friend. But if she makes them have dinner together, then maybe he'll come clean. But otherwise, I just thought this was a very sad, heartbreaking scene about two people who are united in grief but just aren't communicating, and from that, all sorts of ill for them and the kingdom will flow.
He definitely dismisses her again from her because of her age. And I was actually wanted to ask a question whether or not you think he's actually dismissing her because of her gender or her age, or maybe both. I don't know.
Maybe her age more so. Maybe a little bit of both, because she's his daughter.
What did you guys think that she was going to say before he cut her off? Because I wasn't sure. Where she was like, "Oh, I thought I had an insight," and he was like, "Oh, no, you'll." Like, was she going to argue for it again, or was she going to say maybe she realized that he was right, or like I didn't understand what that was meant to imply.
Yeah, I think she was reconciliatory. As I think she was actually trying to just say, well, I wanted to do this, and trying to make him to understand her perspective, and he just shut her off and said, no, you're too small to understand this. You'll learn at some point. You're too
That's
young.
what I thought as well.
And then she just went to total teenager, put down her cutlery and just sat back like whatever.
All could have been solved
Yeah.
at the table with loud cutlery.
Uh, so then we go to the what a scene I call Maester's Call. And the Hand of the King and the Grand Maester both offer counsel over a bowl of maggots. And I see here that Otto is not in love with the idea of the sea snake trying to beat him at his own game. I like this scene a lot actually, because you see Otto, offering advice and trying to not show his cards too directly, but he's always saying she is 12, she is very young and stuff like that. So he's not necessarily he's very good at getting his opinion through, but not showing it as his own opinion, but just disagreeing by agreeing.
I agree, and I also wanted to say about this scene that this is the only audible reaction I had to the episode, and what I yelled at my TV is, "Oh my god, that's not rice," which was very upsetting for me. But I really admire the kind of banal grotesquerie that they're building into this world, where it's just like gross back then, like walk around with a rotting finger, and like the solution was to let maggots eat it while you're having a conversation with your hand in a bowl of them, and it was something that struck me in the last episode too, much more sort of in the face, much like the gentleman who passed at the tourney, RIP. But I just thought this was another sort of thread of that, or another note of that, and it was so realistic and so casual, but also so striking, that I was really impressed by. Not rice.
This Grand Maester is like Pycelle was really, really bad. This guy somehow is even, I feel is even worse. He's completely heartless in everything that he does. They're just like, and like he's probably a better person than Pycelle, but it's like has no emotions. Put your hand into that bowl of maggots. It's definitely good for you.
Well, maggots aren't necessarily bad, is it, Bing? That's one of the few things that are,
Putting, I'm not sure about the medical efficacy of a giant bowl of maggots.
Yeah, no,
Eating your dead
it's actually something that's still used today for
Is it
like an organic
Okay.
debridement
Never mind.
method. Yeah.
I'm not a doctor.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's
It's-
a legitimate. I mean, I would never do it, but it is a treatment that is still applied to just apply maggots to a wound, because they're very, very precise at removing only the dead flesh and leaving the viable tissue untouched.
Yeah, feels gross. And the guy just the Grand Maester just sort of I don't know. He doesn't feel like there's something completely
he's a robot.
he seems to be well, not even just that he's a robot. It's like he's even deader than
His
a robot.
bedside manner is extremely poor.
No, it's a theory. That Grandmaster is a robot from the future.
Okay,
Yeah.
sure. I don't know. It's just this guy. This guy rubs me in the wrong way much more than even Pycelle, which is
He feels
saying
kind
a
of
lot.
quacky to me too. Like, do you really know what you're doing? Is this gonna work? I still got this big boil on my back.
I feel like he's like Pycelle at least had a kind of gross humanity to him. You know what I mean? Where you're like, oh well, he has hobbies, right? But like, this guy feels so by the book in a way that I guess arguably like the ideal Maester might be, where he's so knowledge focused that he's like, yeah, this is what it says to do in the book, and then there's like no thinking beyond that in terms of like empathy or like what that would actually do to someone's body or the emotional impact of like the suggestions that he's making. Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's a fascinating kind of like, this is what pure knowledge looks like, when you don't have any kind of humanity to temper it.
Yeah, I mean that's also interesting because this is alluded to when we see book scenes at the Citadel, that some maesters don't really care about anything else than the book learning that they have, and it might be that this Grand Maester didn't even want to partake in real politics, unlike Pycelle definitely wanted to. So I think that might be a thing, that this guy is just purely there for the job. He sees himself as the king's maester.
He has
And that's it.
tenure, and he really just wants to focus on his research.
Yeah. It sounds like something you know about.
Yeah, I am familiar with the mindset.
Okay. Well, at that or shortly after, when he eats dinner with, I think it's with Alicent, and another small council gets called, an emergency small council, and at this small council they discuss Prince Daemon's theft of the dragon egg, and after learning that it was the little princess dragon egg that Daemon stole, Viserys sends Otto to retrieve it.
I think it is a key point that it's Rhaenyra who has the presence of mind to ask precisely which egg was stolen and to see the depth of the offence that was caused. It just shows her both her smarts, her loyalty, and that she really can understand, probably better than her father, what Daemon is about. And in some ways, it's maybe more similar to him.
So shout out again to the High Valyrian acting. I just am so amazed at how seamlessly they've incorporated that into the show as a language that still allows for emotion and nuance, and it's just beautiful to listen to.
So are they naming the dragons even before they hatch? I was taken a little bit by surprise that it's Dreamfire.
No, it's not Dreamfire. It's the Dreamfire's egg.
Dreamfire made it.
Oh, got it. That makes so much more sense now.
So yeah. Is it sedition? I don't think ever Daemon, encourages people to take up arms against the king in any of the things he does. So
why is the City Watch, which is the watch of the city of King's Landing, on fucking Dragonstone? Yes, it's sedition. I mean, there's a letter in the spirit of the law, my friend. And if you hole up on an island, which is the seat of Princess Rhaenyra, with a flipping mini militia, nick a dragon's egg, I mean, I think your intent is pretty clear.
Don't be seditious. Don't.
I think it is sedition. It's just more of like a petulant fit than anything that's really serious.
Yeah, and it's really dumb jock bollocks, isn't it? I mean, like, the future wife's not even pregnant yet. The whole thing's just nonsense. The fact that he casually tosses the egg back when some teenager shows up and outmans him. I mean, it's just embarrassing. I would be very embarrassed at that point. He needs to go and sit in a corner and think very carefully about what he's done.
It was a temper tantrum. It was deliberately provocative, and he almost succeeded, right, in having Viserys go and confront him directly, dragonless. And I mean, I don't know if or that he would have killed Viserys in that moment, but he certainly opened himself up a hell of an opportunity to take the throne by force.
The whole thing was annoying. When Viserys is like, what should I do? Send him to the wall or put his head on a spike? I was like, either of those are better alternatives to what you're going to do now, which is precisely flipping zero. Sending Otto Hightower to go see him. You don't send someone without a dragon to a dragon fight. Oh, this really pissed me off. It's such bad kingsmanship. I mean, I get he likes his Lego, and that's great. And that he's not as nasty as Robert Baratheon and many of the other kings that we have seen come and go. Like, he seems like in some respects quite decent, and he wants to do what's right. But, no, just put his head on a spike and be done with it, man.
Like I said, he should never be king.
Yeah.
If he does anything else in his life, it would be much, much better.
Sorry, who is the other Kingsguard who goes to Dragonstone? There's Kristen Cole, and then who's the one who just looks real worried the whole time? Because I really enjoyed his reactions to
Harry Westerling.
Okay.
Right?
I just thought, his reaction to Hightower's dick swinging in that scene is brilliant, dude. Like, real.
It's just Crocodile Dundee. Call that a knife. This is a knife. I mean, like, go
That's
around
exactly
with,
what it is.
20 people with spears, and then a massive fuck off dragon turns up, which you know is going to turn up because you know that the guy in question has a dragon. So, I don't know, Otto Hightower thinks he's all Machiavellian, but he was saved by a 16-year-old on a very small dragon. But anyway, I think all the men look dumb in this scene. All of them.
I think that was the moment to me that really cemented the idea that the Dance of Dragons is not about fuckers. It's about the dragons. You know what I mean? And like that Otto Hightower can he's as big a player as he wants to, but Targaryens really are on another level. And they really do have this edge that puts them closer to divinity than any sort of machinator can ever really hope to be.
Yeah, brains are nothing against weapons of mass destruction, and it's why I've always I've always really disliked dragons in this series because I think they really unbalance and unhinge the plot because they're such a ridiculous sort of disproportionate force relative to even the richest, most powerful, conventionally armed lord, that I think they just make kind of the stakes and the tension in storytelling very difficult.
Well, they're unanswerable.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I know there's lots of Targ fans on the Discord and in this community, but I've always found it just narratively not helpful.
But I do think that they're in this particular scenario, they are answerable. And I mean, the answer is the same just from the other side. But I think that was made so explicitly clear at how precarious this balance is, but how evenly matched they are in that sort of mutually assured destruction kind of way.
They're not answerable, are they? Because, you know, you see the size of, I mean, obviously it's so cool when Rhaenyra shows up on her mini dragon. But if Daemon had really decided to go, you know, full Tonto, he could have used his dragon, which is 10 times the size of hers, to just fucking roast her.
I think that's true, but I don't necessarily think from a sort of more casual, I think we're just supposed to see dragons. Like I don't know that like the dragon brackets are necessarily supposed to be featuring in the way that we're thinking about it. I thought, you know, the way that they were squared off on the bridge and the way that all of the, you know, mortal humans kind of just froze and were suddenly completely no longer relevant to anything that was happening. And it was just between the two of them. I thought that was like the really powerful.
I agree, which is why I find the dragons a distraction, because actually that human moment when she says to her uncle, if you want the throne, you have to kill me. Like, this is what it means. And he actually can't bring himself to because he is fond of her and vice versa. And I thought that was such a beautiful moment. And the fact that she could somehow intuit he was lying about the pregnancy. What was that about, guys?
That was really interesting. Yeah.
Is there some secret dragon instinct, or is it she knows her uncle too well, or what? Just a lucky guess, Agatha Christie style? I mean, I don't know what was going on.
Was it before or after she turned and walked away that Rhaenyra knew for sure that she wasn't pregnant? Because I thought maybe it was like, you said I was pregnant, fuck you, and then she just turned around and walked off. Like,
yeah,
I didn't know if it was the reaction that conveyed it to her, but I can't remember how the timing went down.
No, I think she just confronted him with the idea of her being pregnant and his wife just learned of it right at that moment, and then she stormed off because she wouldn't have any of that. So yeah, I think she just called his bluff. I think.
Yeah, she was such an interesting character. I loved the fiance. I thought it was just very nuanced and very sort of interesting set of reactions from her. And I just want to see more of them as a couple and see where that goes and see more of her. The only thing I didn't like, obviously, as I mentioned, was the accent, because it just came across as very Shay the funny whore. And yeah, just less of that, please.
So, what did you think about Dragonstone as a place, as a scene?
I thought it looked pretty badass. No complaints.
No.
Did it change?
No.
From Game of Thrones? Is it?
No.
It kind of looks like the same.
Yeah, that's my problem. I would have hoped that they would have added some sort of dragon, stonework on it, but no.
It didn't look very dragony.
Not really. No.
I was expecting that.
Yeah, but we've not been in, have we? I mean, maybe we'll see more of it and we'll see more up close stuff.
Hopefully, but it's still it's still not my Dragonstone. It's different, yeah. So Maester, the Grand Maester was there. Did you notice?
Yes.
And I don't understand why he was there, because he does not have anything to do with the dragons. Why is he there? Is he just there to get roasted if everything goes wrong?
Take notes.
Yeah, I mean, it's just dumb.
Record what happens.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
A second small council member in case Otto, you need one dies, one is still there. Plan B backup, checking Otto doesn't go rogue. I don't know. Seemed very odd.
Somebody has to tell the story. The tale, I guess.
Also want to mention your comment about Le Creuset. The Le Creuset, pot that they put the dragon into.
That was awesome. That was dragony, man. Oh, and I just feel that Le Creuset have a good line in doing crossover fantasy nerd.
Yeah.
Highly expensive cookware. They did the R2D2 casserole. And I feel that they could very easily do a sort of like a dragon egg warming casserole pot, and me and Varley would probably be the suckers to buy them.
I would
So make it
100% buy that and then never ever use it to cook.
Yeah,
I would,
Yeah,
my
but I
wife.
would know I could.
clearly.
Like I would just look at it.
It would just look very pretty.
Oh,
So
I would
they
use the
should
hell
do
out
that.
of mine.
It's a giant size egg cooker, Le Creuset version. Yeah. Well, I just want to add that it looked really cool when Rhaenyra came, like literally swooping up to save the day from underneath the clouds. It was really a good scene. That.
thinking about the incubator, just one more second. I think it's really interesting the sharp contrast that we have in the very efficiently managed dragon sort of day to day with the dragon keepers, and in contrast to Dany trying to like muddle her way through like what the fuck to do with these. She's like, oh, maybe I should put them in the fire, but they like have a specially designed, ready to go, already filled with coals. Like pop that baby in there, and we'll take it back to it's so. The contrast between like the dragon knowledge and the sort of like the everyday nature of it is fascinating for me in this. Like it's just so routine in a lot of ways that are very strikingly contrasted with our first introduction to dragons and their eggs.
Yeah, and it is lovely. Like I say, just seeing that sort of somehow governmental infrastructure functioning is fascinating for those of us who know it as its dregs in Game of Thrones.
But it's also funny, right? Because it's it doesn't do anything. We know this, that dragon eggs, they hatch, near like Targaryens or at least other dragons. So having it like that, would they want it just to hatch on its own? Usually they would put it in the bed of in the cradle of a newborn Targaryen, right? To have it hatch there.
But only a royal newborn Targaryen, which is the whole beef, right, between Daemon and his big bro.
But they could have just carried it home in their hand, right? Because it wouldn't make
where's the fun of that? I mean, come on. Gotta have
Yeah.
pomp and circumstance.
we have toys now we can dream about.
I mean, that's like saying like, Prince William can take a cab and Uber to Westminster Abbey for his wedding. But no, we have a Golden State coach. We shall use it,
Sure. So moving on. So then the king, after this awesome scene, the king seeks even smaller counsel. He seeks strong counsel, actually. Lionel Strong's counsel about what to do about marriage. And I mean, it's not my strong, but it's a good scene. It shows a level-headed, like a person noble that would just give sound advice. Although it's not very, we don't want a 12-year-old to be married, but it's sound advice from a political standpoint.
It was nice to just hear a conversation where people said stuff that made sense and what they were thinking, and the other person listened and like said stuff back. It was refreshing.
So it shows again a functioning small council, or at least one functioning small council member, someone who's actually there to do his job properly, unlike all the people that sit in a small council in every single iteration of Game of Thrones.
Yeah, and also, I mean, it's a contrast because even when Corlys Velaryon tries to reconciliate with Viserys and tries to, I'm sorry, but here's my daughter, and maybe even Viserys knows or can pick up on Otto's handiwork when Alicent has been shoved his way. I think it's just meant to be like this refreshing advice, counsel that doesn't have any necessary strings attached to it. He's just saying what he thinks is the right course of action.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Next scene I call reconciliation. So Viserys starts out scolding Rhaenyra for flying to Dragonstone without his leave, but ends the conversation by reconciling. It's a good scene for what it is. Anyone else want to add anything?
Viserys was very reasonable in this scene. He has to act like a king and say his king's stuff, but ultimately realizes that she did a good job.
But if he's already decided that he wanted to marry Alicent here, then it's sort of disingenuous. The last end, the end of that conversation, though.
I actually don't think he decided at that point yet.
No, I'm not sure, but if he had, then it would be
Then yes,
it's really bad.
Then yes, that would be really bad. But I don't think he has it.
Why was Alicent there?
You're already
Did I
at the announcement?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine.
But I agree, Sarah. I was looking at like, isn't that a giant tip off when he starts on, I'm going to marry someone,
Yeah.
and Lord Corlys starts puffing himself up. I was like, do you not notice the nubile teenager that's just entered the room?
Yeah,
I mean,
I didn't understand the shock that accompanied her. Just like, I just came to bring you your mail, Daddy. You know, but like, I don't really feel like she would have been a regular, visitor in there.
I think maybe the two who are shocked, like Corlys and Rhaenyra, just couldn't fathom the idea of Alicent being an actual suitable mate to Viserys. So I think it's just they didn't conceive it.
I thought that little go-ahead nod
inconceivable.
that he looked for from her was so heartbreaking because she clearly took it as a moment that they had like finally connected and like he really did care what she thought and he was like, great, I'm gonna nuke your whole future. Thanks for the go-ahead, thanks for the thumbs up. Like
There was the scene before Otto went to Dragonstone, just to back up just like super duper fast, when she was helping him in his mail, and when he just she tried to pull away and he just kind of grabbed her when he noticed her anxiety hands. And what did you guys, if you guys even noticed that, what did you guys actually take from that scene? What did you guys think about the way he pulled her in and the way how she almost kind of like recoiled at her father?
That's where a lot of my feelings about why she is, I don't even want to say attracted to Viserys, but like why she's interested in Viserys or why she's, feels affection for him is because of those feelings of anxiety and fear that she has no one to protect her from her father, especially after her mother died, right? Like, so we get a version of that with Lena where, he's like, this is what my father said to me. He's like, okay, but what did your mom say? And like the message is very different, and she doesn't have that mom message anymore, just as she's becoming an adult woman.
And it was really just this kind of reminiscent of maybe like a young woman, a young girl who is trying to escape a very bad like domestic situation or unhealthy dynamic with her father, and she runs off and gets married.
Yeah, that was totally the vibe that I got from it. Yeah, that whether it's like openly incestuous, I don't, but I think it's certainly possessive to a disturbing degree, and that he clearly comments on how attractive she is, and he's real sus in that scene, and I certainly can see where she would be, doing everything in her power to kind of get out of that and marrying up. There isn't much up from the hand of the king, and she's sort of taking the one out that she has to get someone who could actually overrule him. I hated that he was so shocked that Rhaenyra was shocked, but I thought and I'm like,
to be fair, I think in the books he's also painted as a bit of a doofus. So so I think that's the most true to the books he's ever been. Right there.
Real mad.
Corlys stomps off, and basically the next scene we see him, and he's invited Daemon over for a nice cup of plotting. Well, it's about taking the stepstones. What do you think about that?
Throne stuff happening.
It's funny though, yeah. So that's the Game of Thrones stuff. We've had the Game of Thrones intro like 50 minutes ago, and then just the few last minutes we get something that's slightly Game of Thronesy. That's they could. I just think they should have done a different intro, like a different intro.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely. Or arrangement.
I think the Valerian study or wherever they were, like the sitting room, was such a testament to a level of complexity and detail and thought that has gone into the world building from like the props department and the set construction and stuff. Like he had such creepy shit in there, and somehow it felt more like Pike or one of the Reaver Islands than it did the castles and the settings that we've seen so far. Like it just had this like dampness to it that I can't even explain. But it was such a brilliant atmospheric creation that they put together for that scene, and sort of panning over it and then seeing him talking to someone and wondering who it was. Like I don't know, it was just such a great scene for me. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I agree. Very, very good cinematography. Very well acted. I think by Stephen Toussaint. I think is the actor for this. Again, that's another thing that I said in the first episode. I wasn't sure exactly who this character is. Again, second episode, I have a much better idea what Coolest Valerian's about.
I think they're also doing a really good job of making Damon more sympathetic than he has any right to be. And that was something that I always found kind of striking in The Princess and the Queen and the Rogue Prince too, where you're like, you really want to hate him, but like they're giving him these moments of vulnerability and sort of genuine care for either his brother or his niece. And I think Bina mentioned like the body language and when he's with Mysteria and he just kind of collapses and just needs someone to hug him. I saw that in the scene too, and he's like, I can talk shit about my brother, but he's still my brother, and you can't. I like what they're doing with him, even though I don't want to like him. I do, and I appreciate when a show is able to do that.
It's certainly a highlight for me as well overall in the show, how they kind of elevate him in that way. No matter how much I want to hate him or say he's disgusting and all these awful things, the way they're writing into that and the way they're weaving that vulnerability into him, I think it just kind of elevates him as a character overall. Yeah.
I agree for sure.
I think he's supposed to be a douche and be immature and like have machismo, right? He's like he doesn't like he jests and gets uncomfortable when people knock him down a little from his pedestal, and then he sometimes just still has his own code of honor. Like it's not like our code of honor, but he has something he just won't do, especially about family. Weird.
Giant frat boy.
He is.
And he gathered his giant frat in Dragonstone.
I feel like he has much less hateable Theon Greyjoy energy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, jerk with a heart of gold. Maybe that's a good trope for him.
Yeah, definitely a jerk. I'm not sure about it.
Toxic masculinity, though, where he's like, it's so much of it is a performance and the swagger and the unnecessary risk taking, and then when he's with his whore, he just feels sad and his penis.
It doesn't work.
I think you're completely right. I think it's toxic masculinity bowled up into a prince. That's That's I think that's right, very correctly. And I don't think that's disingenuous to the character either in the books. I think that's completely fair to portray him like this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the translation of his character from page to screen has been really satisfying for me so far, especially in contrast to some of the other choices that they've made. So yeah, I'm really excited. I don't think they've done him dirty at all, and I appreciate that.
Do anyone want to come with some join in with closing notes for this episode?
It's pirates. Are they trying to play them up as some sort of really, really horrifying monsters, or they look weird? And the idea that I like to feed crabs with people is kind of fun.
I totally agree. I felt like coming back to that crab feeder imagery as many times as they did in the episode was unnecessary. Like I felt like it was really striking the first time. The second time I was like, okay, I get it. They feed people to crabs. And then the third time I was like, the fuck? It's fucking crabs. They're still feeding people to them. Like we get it. Do they have grayscale? Or is that something I completely misread?
No, I thought that as well. But I also thought that the very last scene that we would see the Damon's dragon flying over and torch them.
The world's largest crab bake.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we're going to see that next episode. We're going to see a giant crab.
Throw in some ears of corn and some Cajun seasoning, and you got a party on the stepstone.
You're making me hungry. Stop.
Okay, so anything else?
I'm stoked for next week. I can't wait to see more.
Oh yes.
Yeah, it's actually quite good. I mean, it's improved for me as well. When we get rid of the gratuitous, violence against women, then it jumps in my book at least. So that's good. But we'll see. Maybe they'll have some next time.
There's always hope, isn't there?
Oh no, I wouldn't say that. But yeah. It's not without the realm of possibility for them.
I read somewhere that there's something like 3 or 4 like excruciating childbirth scenes in the first 6 episodes or something like that. So I think the odds are ever in our favor that we'll get some violence. But this is such a weird thing to say, but I was thinking with the C-section, like it was refreshing in like the most horrible possible way to see extremely gendered violence playing out against a woman that was not, which, speaks to the nature of the world, that it's, like the bar is underground with how they treat women. But like, I did think that was a very striking choice as an introduction to this world, to suggest that women are expendable, that they are very much secondary in terms of consideration, if they're ever considered at all, that they have this very singular purpose, but yet without making it a sexual violence that happened. I thought that was admirable. It was still just absolutely gut-wrenching, and I still like hear her screaming in my head, but I appreciated the way that they hit a different note, I guess, is maybe the best way to.
Yeah. Anything else?
Just in regards to the theme of the way women's agency is largely controlled by the patriarch society. I feel like with this episode, they've made it more fantasy rather than paralleling our own world, which I think is a bit disappointing. We'd have liked to see it closer to contemporary life rather than.
Didn't get the last bit. So do you say it was more fantasy this time than actual, parallels to our time? Or was that what you're?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think yeah.
And for me, that would be a good thing. But that's not a good thing for you? That's disappointing?
I just kind of like my media to have some form of philosophical point.
Yeah, I guess there's something. Media is a way of, conveying thoughts that, is present in current day society, and whatever you read into, literature or media is sort of a reflection of problems you deal with today. So I guess that's completely correct, or like understandable, that you would wish for it to be as apparent as what was last time. But I don't. Sometimes I just want dragons. I guess personally,
Yeah,
and we got some, so that's good.
yeah.
But
So it's car, but I can't say it, but yeah, met your needs of and helped to pacify you
yeah,
to prevent your Viking raids again.
yes, the violence, the mere threat of violence sated my warrior soul. So that was good.
I was going to say there was almost zero violence this episode.
No, but
other than
the threat of
the crab people.
the threat of violence and dragons eating people, that was enough. I've grown soft through the years. But I'm gonna end it here, and I'm gonna say thank you guys for listening, everyone out there on the various distribution sites that we appear on. Um, remember listeners, that we have a sprawling community of people all around the world, and we are very welcoming. If any of you want to just join the discussion, maybe just on in text, or maybe even at some point join in on our podcast, you can find us on Discord. And yeah, as I said, we're very, very welcoming. We want to get more opinions into these casts. Otherwise, if you're watching on YouTube, just the things, the doobly-doos and the bells and everything that distributes our show to more people. So if you like to do that, do that. If not, it's fine. And any case, we here at the WolfCast will say thank you and end with an arum. So 3, 2, 1.
What is said may never die.
Oh, we have a crack in here as well. Yeah, of course. But in any case, thank you guys.
Thanks, Patrick.
Yeah,
it's great.
This is awesome.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Patrick.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, it took a while to do it.
No, I added him.
Okay, so what did you write? Just write join.
I wrote the same, but obviously the imperialist nature, the tone of my voice, the command and the gravitas of the Vina.
I think you're actually right. Or maybe I just don't have the right.
No, I think what happened was when I typed /join, it then gave me a list of channels to have him join. So then it was kind of like channel : So that's cool.
Yeah. Okay.
But didn't Patrick's people colonize the colonizers though?
Patrick's people being what, the Vikings?
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's technically true, but we just clean the slate and then you can start anew. Really.
You're like a grandpa imperialist, a grand imperialist.
Or like vanish, clean stuff up, and then people can get start anew.
Yeah.
Unlike the British, you don't pillage all their sort of artifacts. So.
Oh well, I don't know about that. I mean, there was a few incidents, but let's not get into that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna drop.
Bing, can I ask where your forum name came from? Why were you Shoe Shiner?
I don't really remember at this point. It's 2 decades ago. That's what you said. Use your name in other forums.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Araru attracted my. They all came in and like, what the fuck is going on? Yeah, they all look very concerned. So maybe I didn't do it right, but anyway.